Welcome to your daily dose of Sunday School, episode 99. We're not continuing. We're starting with R.C. Sproul's Reason to Believe. This is not the current edition. This is a very old cover. You pick it up still. Pretty blue book with a tree. So this is all about different objections to Christianity. So this will be really good. This is probably what you've been wanting me to cover is, well, what do you say to this objection? What do you say to that objection? But this would be a good one to pick up, read, and see that there are good reasons. R.C. Sproul is a very smart man. Good reasons for us to believe what we believe. And chapter 1 is the Bible contradicts itself. It's just a fairy tale. So he's looking at objections that are all around those ideas. So the first is that people claim that the Bible is full of myths. Well, why would you claim that? People claim that because there are miracles in the Bible. Well, does that prove the Bible is a myth? No. In order to say that miracles cannot happen, which is what a lot of people say, in order to say that, they're going to have to prove that there is either no God or that the God who exists cannot mess with the universe he created. That we're in a closed system that God will not interact with. And there's just no way to prove that. So they might have a prejudice that says miracles don't happen, but they really can't prove that miracles don't happen. They're assuming it out of hand. The Bible, on the other hand, is written as history. This is not written as a myth, and it takes its own history seriously. It's not just trying to give you some cool stories of the exploits of a bunch of gods in heaven, that sort of thing. 2 Peter 1:16, for we did not follow cleverly devised myths when we made known to you the power and coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, but we were eyewitnesses of his majesty. The Bible takes its own accounts very seriously, and we need to look at those and not just out of hand say, well, I assume they can't happen, so they can't happen. That's not fair. Another reason people think that the Bible is full of myths is because of parallel accounts to some of the histories in the Bible. One of the primary ones being the flood. You'll hear that, okay, all these different nations had flood accounts, so somehow that disproves the flood account in the Bible. But think about it. We have, about 4,000 years ago, the world was destroyed, and one family and a representation of every kind of animal come off this boat. So this family forms a society. This society builds a tower. God judges them for disobeying his command, and they are spread throughout the world. So what do you expect to be all throughout the world? You expected there to be flood accounts, and you expect there to be towers, pyramids, ziggurats, that sort of thing. Why do you see this similar sort of architecture across the world? Well, Tower of Babel, these are the descendants of the people at Babel who still remember the flood. Now, some people say then also that that his account is like different myths, Greek myths, Zoroastrianism. I think that's what comes up a lot. And there's an Indian god who becomes a man and fights a battle and saves the day. And Sproul points out something I think very helpful is that we shouldn't it's not enough just to have this kind of soundbite of, well, what about these other gods who became man? And then think, okay, well, that must be like Jesus. But to actually look at those accounts and not just say, okay, what's similar, but what's different, and that the differences are greater than the similarities. They're not intended to be, these other accounts aren't intended to be historical, whereas the Hebrews, they place a high priority on the truth of their accounts. So that's one issue there. And I would also say that, if you're Satan, Satan did everything he could, you got multiple events of destroying the young boys in Israel. Satan wanted to keep Christ from coming. So wouldn't he also make, through his demons who are these false gods, wouldn't he also make a bunch of counterfeit Christs to try to keep people from ever turning to the true Christ when he finally came? I would think so. The other, objection that Sproul looks at is that the Bible conflicts with science. So it's often pointed out that the Bible seems to have a three-storied view of the universe. There's hell, earth, and heaven. I think that is somewhat in the category of the phenomenological and the poetic, because we have this vast universe above us, and in some sense, God is everywhere. God is everywhere, but in some sense, He is distant from us. It makes sense. Authority goes up. We imagine Him in the heaven. We still do that, even though nobody's really teaching that. And then because the dead go to the ground and there's fire in the ground, it's easy to imagine that that's where hell is located. And but really, I think we all kind of assume that it's a different plane of existence, and that's more how things appear. But we still talk in those types of phenomenological terms today. Meteorologists, they'll do it. They'll talk about the sun rising, and that's not because they aren't real scientists. The other one is kind of the question of history, like the creation of the world, and we talked about this recently. That's not the same as the repeatable experiments of science. That is somebody starting from an assumption that the earth was made this way, gradually, without God, and then fitting in the pieces. They're doing the exact same thing that the Christian who starts with God's account of creation and says, how do these pieces fit in? They're doing the same process. It's just that they have different starting points. So that's not anti-science either.